The story takes place in a city where everyone is running away from a falling tower. And while some of them are using barrier magic to try to hold the tower in place, they notice the protagonist, named Shield, protecting a cat. They wonder why the barrier he created is so big, and some of them start to recognize him as the court mage. When people start to complain about him saving a cat instead of people, Shield lets them know that he has already saved them by holding the falling tower in place. A few days later, Shield is getting engaged to a busty babe named Elaine, and with a smile on her face, she comments on how it's going to be a very fun day. Suddenly, a couple of knights surround Shield, followed by the appearance of the knight's commander, Carasaris, who tells Shield that he is banished from the country under suspicion of planning a coup. Confused, Shield reassures him that he hasn't done such a thing, but Carasaris argues that they have already found the evidence. Just then, Elaine speaks up and apologizes for entering Shield's room without permission, saying that she was worried about what he has been doing at night lately. After hearing this, Shield instantly realizes that he is being set up, and although his barrier magic has protected this country from invasions, he is now being banished. Nonetheless, Shield decides not to argue with him any further and leaves without making a fuss. When Shield was a kid, everyone looked down on him for using low-level barrier magic, but since he kept honing it, he ultimately became the best barrier magic user in the country. But only he knows that the barrier he placed on the country is not permanent and is already reaching its limit right now. Thanks to the small amount of money Shield was able to bring along, he decides to head south for the time being, but before that, he makes a quick stop to fill his stomach. Once he leaves the restaurant, Shield notices a couple of hooded men following him. To his shock, they have no intentions of talking and instantly charge Shield with weapons in hand. To protect himself, Shield uses his barrier magic named Weapon Destruction, which breaks their knives in half. However, they already expected this to happen and decided to take Shield on using magic. The magic spell they use on Shield is gravity magic, but instead of panicking, Shield uses the barrier magic named Reflection to reflect their own magic on them. Knowing that they've been defeated, the bandits inform Shield that others will come for him as well, since the person who hired him wants Shield dead, so he doesn't regain his position. After hearing this, Shield frees them of the gravity magic, pinning them onto the ground, and takes his leave. Furthermore, Shield figures that more pursuers can come after him if he goes south or north, and ultimately decides to take the east route, which is through a jungle. While making his way through the jungle, a caterpillar lands on Shield's shoulder, causing him to freak out and run for his life, only to come across a giant dragon. However, Shield doesn't seem to be scared of the dragon and decides to just ignore it. The dragon lets him know that it's called Bahamut, the strongest species to exist, and it now wants to devour him. Without wasting a second, Bahamut lunges at Shield, but his barrier magic protects him, forcing the dragon to back off. Confused, Bahamut once again charges Shield, but the result, thanks to the barrier, is the same. But this time, the dragon injures its teeth trying to break through the barrier and can't seem to understand that it can't break through such a simple magic spell. Shield informs it that he has been honing it for 10 years, but Bahamut doesn't buy it, and this time, tries attacking Shield with its fire breath. This time, Shield uses the barrier magic Reflection, which sends the fire breath back to the dragon, ripping off its wing. Seeing that the dragon has been defeated, Shield decides to continue his journey when, unexpectedly, he notices a bare-skinned shorty sitting where the dragon fell, telling Shield that he's pretty strong. When he asks who she is, the girl informs him that she's Bahamut and has not taken a human form with magic. Flustered, Shield asks her to put some clothes on, and once again, thanks to magic, she makes some clothes appear on her body. Since it was her first time not being able to eat a human, Bahamut decides to accompany him as Shield seems like someone fun to be around. As Shield was getting bored alone, he agreed, but as soon as he turned his back, Bahamut once again charged Shield and tried to take a bite out of him, only to be stopped by his barrier. Shield informs her that he always has an invisible barrier around him, and using physical reflection, sends her crashing onto the ground. Frustrated, Bahamut stands back up quietly and continues to follow him around. After walking around some time, Bahamut informs Shield that he's going the wrong way, and he asks her to lead the way if she knows it, as well as following him from behind doesn't make sense. He then asks if they are almost at the next town, and when Bahamut disagrees, Shield gets worried as they are running out of supplies, thanks to Bahamut, who eats a week's worth. As they continue their journey, Shield mentions that Bahamut is a very long name, asking if she has another name, and Bahamut informs Shield that some people used to call her Fae, and Shield decides to call her that as well. Additionally, he realizes that they haven't seen other dragons or minions around, thanks to the self-proclaimed strongest dragon who is accompanying him. Before long, they arrive at the city of Egan, and Shield has already decided to take adventurers, requests, and live comfortably here. However, all his hopes and dreams die when he fails to defeat a small monster inside a dungeon. Seeing this makes Faye wonder how he can barely handle those things when he managed to beat her. Annoyed, Shield tells her to handle them instead, but Faye argues that she can't do much when they run away after seeing her and blames Shield for being a weakling who has no knowledge and is terrible at collecting herbs. Realizing that he can't even defeat these weaklings, Shield thinks about how his life is now ruined when, suddenly, he notices a valuable pocket watch in his belongings and gets an idea. Without wasting a second, Shield, along with Faye, pays a visit to Count Albert, who has decided to hire Shield to teach his daughter, thinking that Shield is a court wizard. But on the other hand, Shield only knows how to use barrier magic and isn't sure what he will do if she asks to learn new spells. Just then, all their worries disappear when Albert invites them to a table full of food, and they instantly start to devour everything in sight. Afterward, he notices Albert's daughter staring at him, and seeing that she already has so much magical power, Shield realizes that he might have nothing to teach her. Soon after, they all sit face to face, and Albert finally introduces Shield to his daughter, informing her that they are her private tutors. His daughter, Amelia, shows her gratitude to her father with a smile on her face once he leaves, but her attitude changes instantly. She begins asking Shield to tell her the truth about himself. Shield lets her know that they are court wizards from the Helena kingdom who will be their tutors, and while Amelia believes that the watch looks genuine, she isn't sure if it belongs to him. Having no other choice, Shield ends up telling her that the barrier that is covering the Helena kingdom was created by none other than Shield himself. Amelia gets enraged after hearing that and says that if Shield tries it again, she will make him bear the weight of his words. When Shield tries to make her believe that he's telling the truth, she questions the reason he's living in such hardship when he's a court wizard. Shield informs her that he was expelled for making that barrier, but she calls him a terrible liar and ultimately tells Shield to get out of her house. When Shield refuses to leave, Amelia tells him to sit in a corner and not to interfere with her practice. To start things off, Amelia begins using fire magic, water magic, and wind magic all at once. And after firing those spells, she uses enhancement to dash towards the dummy that she attacked with her magic and severs its hand. Shield compliments her but gets told by Amelia not to talk to her. However, being as persistent as he is, Shield offers to rein her in real combat. In the end, she agrees and decides to face him hand-to-hand, as facing Amelia's magic could be brutal for Shield. Hesitant, Shield asks Faye to face her instead, but she refuses, as with her power she might eliminate Amelia for good. Nonetheless, he is forced to face her, and without wasting a second, she runs towards Shield and tries kicking him in the throat. However, the invisible barrier blocks her attack and hurts her leg instead. But she doesn't give up, and after showing that she's aiming for his face, hits Shield in the abdomen instead. But the barrier once again ends up hurting Amelia instead, causing her to wonder if he eats iron every day. Shield mentions that he's the victor of their battle, and Amelia decides to let him stay a little longer. Excited, Shield tells Faye that they have finally secured themselves lodging and food, but gets told by Amelia that she will get rid of him soon. Later that night, a maid informs Shield that Amelia is sick, and after checking up on her, he realizes that she has a high fever, which could be due to internal bleeding. For the time being, Shield decides to heal her, and when Faye questions if he needs help, Shield refuses, asking her to leave it to her tutor. The next morning, Amelia comes up to the two of them, saying that she wants to talk. Shield lets her know that he's glad that she recovered, to which she replies, asking if he's the one who healed her. Although she is aware that no mere swindler can heal that well, Amelia still finds it hard to believe that he's a court mage. This is why she has decided to give him another chance, and challenges Shield to compete with her using his supposed magic. Once they are outside, she informs him that the battle will continue unless one of them surrenders. Shield ends up agreeing to her terms, as this seems like a good opportunity for her to learn. With that, she lets out a basic fire arrow, and seeing it, Shield mentions how Amelia is underestimating him. But to his shock, she makes several more fire arrows appear, asking if he can withstand these consecutive attacks. Surprised, Shield thinks about how she summoned them faster than he can last in bed and decides to get a bit serious this time. As soon as Amelia fires those arrows, Shield creates a barrier named Magic Absorption, which ends up absorbing all the arrows that she fired. Amelia can't believe what she's seeing, but decides not to back down and ends up firing a giant fireball at him. However, Shield easily absorbs it as well, and as a last resort, Amelia tries burning him with her flames, but that magic-absorbing barrier easily eats all the flames without an issue. Shield then questions what she will do now when, suddenly, he notices that it has started to rain. Turns out it's one of Amelia's magic, and she uses the rain to freeze Shield's legs, and once he is unable to move, she prepares to strike him with an attack made of ice. Shield is amazed to see this, and compliments Amelia for having a lot of creativity. But as expected, he easily blocks this attack as well, informing Amelia that his barrier is very versatile. Nonetheless, their battle continues, and after a while, Amelia gets exhausted as none of her tricks seems to be working. Curious, she asks him about the type of magic Shield is using, and he decides to tell her only if she calls him Sensei. Though embarrassed, she still somehow manages to call him Sensei. This results in Shield letting her know that the only magic he uses is barrier magic, and just by using this soul magic, he was able to become a court mage. After a short moment of silence, Amelia finally understands that Shield really is one of the 10 magicians of the Helena kingdom, and after almost losing her mind, runs away in excitement. Later that day, the two of them are eating lunch when they notice Amelia staring at them from afar. After realizing that she has been found, Amelia once again asks if Shield is really the big shot she's heard of, and when he agrees, Amelia comes up to the table, reassuring Shield that her previous self wasn't her true personality. Furthermore, she starts to regret treating Shield like an unpaid intern when he's someone she has admired for so long. In the end, Shield reassures her that it's okay and asks Amelia to eat with them. After joining them at the table, Amelia asks Shield about his relationship with Faye, and he lets her know that she's a dragon who ended up following him after he blocked all of her attacks. Faye then formally introduces herself to Amelia and informs Shield that she just remembered something important. When Shield asks her about it, Faye informs him that they haven't decided on the next leader of the Dragon Forest, and if they don't, then dragons might invade the city. Just as the two of them start to cook up a plan to deal with this mess, Amelia interrupts, saying that they can't interfere with the dragons. Her reasoning is that dragons are transcendental beings, and one wrong move can trigger a war. However, both Faye and Shield reassure her that they will be fine, and before long, find themselves standing in front of a dragon. Without hesitation, Faye tells the black dragon named Nidhugg that he will inherit the leadership, and orders him not to cause trouble for humans. But after seeing that Nidhugg has other plans, Faye ends up transforming into a dragon as well. Before the fight between the two dragons begins, Shield picks Amelia up in his arms and takes her to a safe distance. After watching the fight for a while, Shield puts Amelia down and activates his barrier magic, informing Amelia that protecting the city from dragons is something he can easily do. As the battle continues, Shield tells Amelia to think about fighting one of those dragons later, which she finds to be an impossible feat, causing Shield to remind her that he won against Faye using his barrier magic. Ultimately, Faye manages to defeat the Black Dragon, and following that, transforms back to her human form, saying that this should be enough for Nidhugg to obey his orders. Meanwhile, Amelia, who just witnessed everything that happened, breaks down and informs Shield that if he deploys such a big barrier in the city, he will get involved in politics again. When Faye asks the reason behind it, Amelia informs her that this is how humans are. They find great power and try to take advantage of it. After returning home, Amelia's father also finds out that Shield is the legendary mage who deployed the miraculous barrier, and lets him know that he can't allow him to remain a tutor at their house. Shocked, Shield asks if he's getting fired and gets told by Amelia's father that he's a powerful magic user capable of altering the balance of power on the continent. So if he stays, he could disrupt the power balance with neighboring countries. Furthermore, he can't make sense of the fact that the nation of Helena exiled someone capable of building a defensive barrier for the country by himself. Shield replies by saying that they might have some secret strategy that makes him unnecessary. But Amelia's father mentions that it's impossible, as thanks to that barrier, Helena has been able to show strength to neighboring countries, and it's no exaggeration to say that the course of the continent was decided by that barrier. Hearing this makes Shield realize that he has a high reputation in other countries, but in his own country, he wasn't treated like a hero, but was treated as if it was natural for him to have barriers. After hearing all this, Amelia's father wonders if the nation of Helena has lost their mind and informs Shield that he's currently negotiating this matter with the government, as this is not something he can resolve on his own. Faye also adds that something like this was bound to happen since he used magic on such a large scale. This makes Shield blame Faye for not defeating Nidhugg in a smarter way, to which she replies that it would have been her defeat if she had let her guard down. Amelia's father, who listened to their conversation, asked if the two of them fought against the gods. Confused after hearing him call dragon gods, Shield reveals that Faye is actually Bahamut and the dragon who repelled Nidhugg in order to protect the city. At this point, Amelia's father can't believe what they are talking about and informs Shield that in the country of Uri, dragons are believed to be gods, and it's hard for him to comprehend the fact that a dragon is sitting in front of him. In the end, his stomach starts to hurt due to the series of surprises, and he asks Shield to just wait until the country officials arrive. But before Shield, Amelia's father questions if Shield will become an ally if they were to offer him a place to stay in the country. However, Shield is unsure, as all he sees is a future where people use him and throw him away. In the same way they do with protection. Later that day, Shield finds a table full of delicacies sitting in front of him, which makes him wonder if it's because they discovered his true identity. As they start eating, Shield asks Faye if he's the only one who feels a different meaning in Amelia's gaze, and Faye replies by saying that Amelia looks like she wishes to go pound town with him. She further adds that Shield is a man who gets into troublesome situations, but this is what she finds interesting about him. In the end, Faye reassures Shield that if it gets annoying, she will escape with him, as it wouldn't be bad to run away somewhere far from people. The following day, whenever Shield asks Amelia a question, she always says yes, even if it leads him into a dangerous situation. Not only that, but she has been sticking to him like glue, and the way she is grabbing him causes Faye to comment that Amelia's acting like a cat in heat. Just as Shield is starting to enjoy his walk in the street, an unknown baddie appears and introduces herself as Meryl, the swordsman with the title of Sword Saint. When Shield questions what she needs, Meryl informs him that she had information about Shield getting expelled, and by the order of the Queen, she has now come to receive him as a special guest. Meryl then asks him to accompany her to the land of beastmen areas, telling him to agree while she is still being nice. However, Shield starts getting a bad feeling about this and ends up refusing, saying that he can't let others decide how he lives his life. While taking out her sword, Meryl asks for Shield's forgiveness if he wakes up and finds himself in the Beastman country. With that being said, she appears right in front of him and tries to attack, but Shield easily blocks it using a weapon destruction barrier. Meryl is forced to back away, while Shield is shocked that this skill of his normally breaks a weapon in two. Meryl tells Shield that her sword was forged by the best blacksmith in Beastman land and won't break so easily. She then tries attacking once again, but after getting blocked, Meryl disappears in thin air. To deal with any surprise attacks, Shield puts up a barrier in a wide area and starts to wonder when the attack might come. Suddenly, he notices her movement and manages to block her just in time. Furthermore, he uses the physical reflection barrier to attack her with the same force she was planning on attacking him with. Seeing that Meryl is still able to stand, Shield is impressed. Meryl also realizes that the power of her sword is being reflected, to which Shield agrees, saying that her sword won't reach him. Additionally, S.H.I.E.L.D. questions if she would really be capable of taking her to her land even if he's dead, reminding Meryl that he was supposed to be a special guest. Meryl replies by saying that if S.H.I.E.L.D. can't protect himself, he isn't the kind of person her country needs. Afterward, she mentions that she can still go on and disappears once again. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. is aware that she can't defeat him unless she breaks the barrier, and even though she attacks him from a number of spots, nothing works. The last attack she tries on landing gets reflected back to her, sending Meryl flying and crashing onto the ground. Ultimately, with those milkers out in the open, she accepts her defeat, but instead of celebrating, S.H.I.E.L.D. is too embarrassed by what he's seeing. Having no other choice, he gives her his own clothes to wear and gets told by Meryl that, since she has orders from the Queen, she has to bring him back to her country at all costs. For now, she has decided to rest in the city and find other means to make him agree. But before she leaves, Meryl informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that this is her personal constitution and asks him to become her husband. S.H.I.E.L.D. freaks out after hearing the word husband, and Meryl elaborates that her wish is to marry someone her sword cannot reach. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. refuses, saying that it doesn't look like a good idea if their relationship only consists of trying to eliminate each other. Just then, Amelia intervenes, telling Meryl that the master has been hers from the beginning and she's more of his type. But Meryl argues, telling Amelia that her iron-bored flat body won't be satisfying anyone. Furthermore, Meryl asks Faye if she wishes to stay close to S.H.I.E.L.D., to which she replies by telling Meryl that her only wish is to eat him. Apparently, her ability consists of obtaining the power of those she eats and plans on making S.H.I.E.L.D.'s powers hers. Nonetheless, she doesn't plan on getting in the way of her marriage, as people's lives are too short. Faye is more than ready to wait until S.H.I.E.L.D. becomes an old fart so he's easier to eat. After hearing that, Meryl takes a sigh of relief and asks Faye to watch over their wedding, to which she agrees. Seeing the two of them shake hands, Amelia says that she won't be handing over her master and promises to bury Meryl once her jugs are somewhat prominent. Suddenly, another person appears, saying that she was skeptical when she heard that S.H.I.E.L.D. was banned, but never thought it could be true. That girl then formally greets S.H.I.E.L.D., and seeing that she's a spatial magic user, ends up impressing S.H.I.E.L.D. She then introduces herself as Gabriel, representative of Minant, who wishes to invite him to Minant. But just like before, S.H.I.E.L.D. informs her that he has decided not to go elsewhere for a while. After hearing this, Gabriel says that her mission is to take him back, and after letting him know that she's good at it, Gabriel disappears. She then appears right behind S.H.I.E.L.D. but fails to touch him, thanks to the barrier around his body. This makes Gabriel realize that it won't be as easy as she thought, and ends up summoning a literal giant to deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. But that giant's attacks get reflected by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s barrier, forcing Gabriel to stop that attack, since damage to the city could be problematic. S.H.I.E.L.D. commends her for having the luxury to worry about the city, but Gabriel is aware that at this point of battle, some injuries are unavoidable. After requesting S.H.I.E.L.D. not to die, she crushes him using the giant's hands, and is sure that even S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't be able to stop something like this. To her surprise, her summoned giant breaks after a few seconds, and S.H.I.E.L.D. emerges completely unharmed. Having no other choice, Gabriel ends up summoning an entire island to crush S.H.I.E.L.D., informing him that all he can see is just the tip of the iceberg. Before long, the island she summoned covers the whole city, making S.H.I.E.L.D. realize that the city is going to be destroyed. While Gabriel mentions that some damage is inevitable, Faye is forced to let out her wings in order to protect Amelia. As Gabriel prepares to attack, S.H.I.E.L.D. lets her know that he won't be holding back this time. With that, she causes the whole island to fall onto the city, and just in time, S.H.I.E.L.D. covers the entire city with his magic barrier, ultimately protecting everyone. As a last resort, Gabriel decides to teleport him to Minant with her magic, but S.H.I.E.L.D. is confident that he can just reflect any magic she sends with his barrier. Nonetheless, she uses her forced teleportation magic, and simultaneously, S.H.I.E.L.D. uses the magic reflection barrier. After successfully managing to reflect her magic, he looks at Gabriel, only to see those two planets perfectly exposed. While S.H.I.E.L.D. freaks out, Gabriel tries hiding them, asking if he intentionally reflects the magic to transfer only her clothes, to which S.H.I.E.L.D. disagrees. Furthermore, he gives some of his clothes to Gabriel, causing her to tease him for undressing her, and then telling her to dress herself. After she's all dressed up, Gabriel tells S.H.I.E.L.D. to take responsibility for what just happened, but Meryl intervenes, informing her that S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be her husband. This causes an argument to spark between two of them about who can rock his bed the most at night. In the end, they ask for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s preference, but S.H.I.E.L.D. can't seem to see them that way, as just a few moments ago, they were trying to take him away by force. Hearing this, Meryl comments that she has no other choice but to seduce him over time, to which Gabriel agrees, and so does Amelia. Faye also jumps into the conversation, informing everyone that Amelia's father will bring officials from the country soon, so it would be better for them to speak there as representatives of their countries. Luckily, everyone agrees to this, and just when S.H.I.E.L.D. is about to say something, everyone becomes silent. They then tell S.H.I.E.L.D. to look at the forest, and as soon as he does, he witnesses his barrier over Helen's kingdom shattering into pieces. Faye comments on how that barrier didn't allow the dragon race to pass for 3 years, and Meryl also seems glad to see this, as the barrier that was the foundation of the arrogant Helena kingdom is disappearing. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. already knew that this was bound to happen, but he was also aware that it was no longer his business. With that being said, the meeting between the three kingdoms begins, and to start things off, Amelia's father decides to present the conditions of their country, Uri. He has decided to guarantee him a position of court magician, and his annual salary will be 10 times that of court magicians from other countries. S.H.I.E.L.D. gets excited and decides to live in Uri, but after that, Meryl decides to present her offer. She informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that the Iria's kingdom will offer him the title of Duke and lands equivalent to 1/10 of the country. Just as this offer starts to attract S.H.I.E.L.D. even more, Gabriel interrupts and mentions that their country will offer S.H.I.E.L.D. the title of Duke, land, and even sea. Not only that, but if S.H.I.E.L.D. is to join their country, they will also grant territories from their country to the Uri and Iria's kingdoms. After looking at each other for a moment, both Amelia's father and Meryl end up deciding to hand over S.H.I.E.L.D. to the Minute Kingdom. Elsewhere in the country of Helena, Carasaris, the captain of the knights appears in front of the king and gets questioned regarding S.H.I.E.L.D.'s disappearance, as it's been half a day since the barrier broke. Carasaris informs the king that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been missing for 3 weeks and requests that the king put him in charge of the entire search for S.H.I.E.L.D. The king agrees, saying that only someone like Carasaris would volunteer in this crisis. Additionally, he seems a bit unsure regarding the fact that Elaine hid it from him, wondering why she's so calm when her future husband has disappeared. Carasaris reassures the king that he is investigating this matter and leaves. Later that day, Carasaris yells at Elaine for proposing such a foolish plan, to which she replies by saying that it's a little too late for that, as she didn't know that the barrier would collapse. Furthermore, she wanted to marry the crown prince, and since Carasaris is an accomplice as well, she tells him to take responsibility. Carasaris mentions that he went along because she promised to appoint him the prime minister. After this short argument, Elaine begins crying, saying that she just wanted to be with her beloved prince, while Carasaris makes up his mind to hide the truth at all costs. For now, he tells Elaine to silence those who witnessed the engagement break with money, while he will search for S.H.I.E.L.D. and torture him if necessary to raise the barrier. In the end, S.H.I.E.L.D. mentions that while he's happy about what Minute offered, he has decided not to go anywhere and plans to find a high-paying job with a few springs attached. Gabriel lets him know that there aren't any jobs like that, and the only thing that might happen is him getting pursued by countries that are after the barrier power. S.H.I.E.L.D. agrees, saying that there might not be any easy positions left for him in the world. Instead, Gabriel decides to give him the land of Muria that is east of Minute, but in return, he needs to make Muria an autonomous territory under him. S.H.I.E.L.D. comments on what it's like to become a king, and Gabriel agrees, saying that it's essentially independence from her country. Not only that, but she also wants him to put up a barrier in the cities near the Dragon Forest. After hearing this, Meryl also adds that protecting against the threat of dragons would be beneficial to all nations, as his power is too great to belong to just one nation. Just by having a barrier in those cities, it's enough to boost a country's defense far more than they are now. Eventually, S.H.I.E.L.D. agrees to this offer as he's heard that Muria is a land blessed with rich resources. With that, they decide to move forward with that plan, and in order to celebrate this arraignment, Amelia's father decides to open a bottle of champagne. A few days later, S.H.I.E.L.D. finally manages to put a barrier in the northernmost city of Minot, and when Faye mentions how it should have taken more than a day, S.H.I.E.L.D. lets her know that it could be done in less than an hour, but that would leave a bad impression. After the barrier is complete, Gabriel thanks S.H.I.E.L.D. for the hard work, and S.H.I.E.L.D. questions if he can move freely around Minot now. Apparently, he wishes to tour the country slowly until he reaches his domain, and to make things easy for S.H.I.E.L.D., Gabriel decides to give him a passage permit to cross the checkpoints. Lastly, she hands him a ruby magic stone bracelet that certifies him as the lord of the domain. When S.H.I.E.L.D. thanks her, she asks him to show his gratitude by signing a marriage certificate, but gets interrupted by the other two chicks, who remind S.H.I.E.L.D. that his meat belongs to them. Since then, a few days have passed, and Faye asks S.H.I.E.L.D. about the money Gabriel gave them. He informs her that it was around 10,000 gold coins, which is enough to travel for 10 days with no problems. This makes Faye wonder why they are already out of money after only 3 days, only to be told by S.H.I.E.L.D. that she is the one who ate enough for 10 people. He further mentions that if it keeps up, he might die of starvation and asks Faye to do some work for money as well. However, she doesn't have a reason to work, as if S.H.I.E.L.D. were to starve to death. It'll just make it easy for her to devour him. Knowing that he has to earn money with the need to reveal his identity, a place comes to mind, and that place turns out to be the Adventurers Guild. He heads straight to the reception and informs the receptionist that he wishes to register as an adventurer and take on a quest. After looking at him from top to bottom, the receptionist instantly realizes that even a toddler could overpower him and asks if he has any experience. When S.H.I.E.L.D. refuses, she ends up giving him the E rank and a list of things he needs to gather. Frustrated, S.H.I.E.L.D. asks if there aren't any quests to hunt strong monsters and gets reminded that he's an E rank. Suddenly, another adventurer appears, asking if he needs help. As soon as the receptionist sees him, she becomes as wet as the bedsheets after a 1-minute session while S.H.I.E.L.D. questions who he is. The receptionist mentions that it's Aizel and informs him that S.H.I.E.L.D. wishes to take dangerous quests on his own. Ultimately, Aizel decides to accompany him on a difficult quest, which ends up impressing the receptionist, who is amazed by the fact that Aizel went out of his way to help a rookie. With that, he suggests splitting the reward they earn, to which S.H.I.E.L.D. agrees, knowing full well that he will receive Faye's part as well. To start things off, Aizel decides to take the Jenga Turtle quest, and for that, the three of them head inside a cave. While Aizel is busy informing them about the dangers a Jenga Turtle can bring, the two of them ignore his warnings like a nerd ignores extracurricular activities. Eventually, S.H.I.E.L.D. begins thinking about the turtle as well and regrets taking a quest against a monster that hides. After a while, Aizel looks back at S.H.I.E.L.D. and notices that he's looking pale. S.H.I.E.L.D. reassures him that he isn't scared a bit, and when Aizel asks about who will take the vanguard and who will take the rear guard position, S.H.I.E.L.D. lets him know that they don't need those roles. Frustrated by how inexperienced he is, Aizel informs him that it's better to assign roles in that way, so they can adapt to different monsters during combat. Nonetheless, he tells S.H.I.E.L.D. to just focus on staying safe for now. Before long, the Jenga Turtle appears in front of them, and without wasting any time, Aizel jumps to take it down despite S.H.I.E.L.D. warning him not to. He tries piercing its shell using his sword, but his sword doesn't even leave a scratch. S.H.I.E.L.D. has also noticed that Aizel's attack doesn't seem to be working, and if it keeps up, his sword will break as well. To fix this problem, S.H.I.E.L.D. gives his sword physical enhancement, but even that doesn't seem to do anything. Knowing that the weak attacks won't do anything, S.H.I.E.L.D. ends up reinforcing his sword's hardness with his barrier, and once he's done, Aizel finally manages to pierce the turtle's shell. However, the turtle changes its strategy as well and begins charging towards him while spinning. In order to protect Aizel, S.H.I.E.L.D. puts a barrier in front of him. But the force behind that attack still sends Aizel crashing onto the ground since S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't cover his whole body in time. After getting back on his feet, Aizel informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that the turtle isn't an A-rank monster but an S-rank one. Seeing that Aizel is already at his limit, S.H.I.E.L.D. attracts the turtle towards himself, and this time the turtle charges S.H.I.E.L.D. with an even faster speed. Aizel, standing there unable to do anything, sees blood splatter, which makes him wonder if S.H.I.E.L.D. is dead. But after the dust clears out, Aizel realizes that the blood is actually coming from the head of the Jenga Turtle, and S.H.I.E.L.D. actually manages to defeat it. Curious, Aizel asks what happened, to which S.H.I.E.L.D. replies by saying that all he did was raise a barrier. While Aizel finds it hard to believe that the turtle was defeated by such basic magic, Faye heads towards the corpse in order to eat its shell. This makes Aizel wonder if she can even eat that thing, and before long, Faye begins feasting on it. After eating some parts of the shell, her wings start to transform and take the form of that turtle's shell, which she finds to be really interesting. S.H.I.E.L.D. lets her know that it looks pretty ridiculous, and after taking his advice, Faye decides to hide it and only take it out when needed. With that, he decides to sell the rest of the turtle and calls for Aizel, only to see him lying on the floor unconscious. Later that day, S.H.I.E.L.D. manages to secure a ton of bread after selling the turtle, while Aizel still can't believe the fact that the man he partnered up with is the legendary court mage. Furthermore, S.H.I.E.L.D. asks if Aizel is really okay with him keeping all the reward, to which he agrees, saying that he was pretty useless the whole time. Before they leave, S.H.I.E.L.D. invites Aizel to come along to Muria, as it would be useful to have him around. However, he refuses as he's the best adventurer the city has right now. Nonetheless, S.H.I.E.L.D. hopes that the two of them meet again someday, and with that, he leaves. Faye comments on how Aizel was a good man until the end, and S.H.I.E.L.D. adds the fact that this is why he left a small gift for Aizel, which is a barrier on his arm. A few days later, they finally arrive in another city, but all their money is gone once again. After walking around, Faye talks about how the city seems pretty empty when suddenly, a few people come out running, asking if S.H.I.E.L.D's the priest. However, they get disappointed after seeing that S.H.I.E.L.D. has the face of a gooner and start to wonder when the priest might arrive. S.H.I.E.L.D. lets them know that he's no priest but can be of help, and is told about the curse they are dealing with. Apparently, the people of this city keep getting sick, which is why they are waiting for a priest. S.H.I.E.L.D. offers to take care of the problem, and when Faye argues that barriers don't stop curses, he tells her that there's no other way, as if this keeps up, he'll starve to death. Faye once again reminds him that it's the best possible scenario for her, and seeing them fight makes the townsfolk wonder if they made the right decision. Ultimately, they accept his help, and on their way to the cursed location, Faye reminds S.H.I.E.L.D. that they don't even know if the curse is real. Curious, S.H.I.E.L.D. asks if she knows anything about it, and gets told by Faye that she wouldn't know a thing about a curse weak enough that it can't even eliminate humans. Just then, she notices a nostalgic smell coming from a distance and decides to follow it. Ultimately, they arrive at the location, and S.H.I.E.L.D. also starts to feel a strong magical presence. Turns out the lake they are standing in front of is completely red, and Faye informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that a demon named Aizel, who was her right-hand man, is present inside. Without wasting any time, she releases the seal of Aizel and figures that his magic leaked through the cracks in the seal and affected the townsfolk. S.H.I.E.L.D. mentions that it's even more troublesome than their original mission, and before long, Aizel emerges from the lake and kneels before Faye. He apologizes to Faye for being sealed by humans and reassures her that he's ready for punishment. However, Faye lets him know that there's no need for punishment, and after thanking her for her generosity, Aizel questions the reason there's a human by her side. He instantly asks Faye to let him eliminate S.H.I.E.L.D., but Faye lets him know that their war with the humans ended a long time ago. Aizel suggests starting the war again and says that their first step could be beheading the dimwit standing in front of him. Furthermore, he reassures Faye that he's even stronger than before and showcases his corruption magic. Apparently, he developed it within the 300-year period of his sealing and is sure that even the hero can't counter it. Faye is also sure that it's not something humans can counter, and Aizel adds the fact that if the hero were to appear, he could just eliminate him and rule over the humans. Nonetheless, Faye tells Aizel that she can't allow it in this era, as there are beings worse than heroes. This makes Aizel ask if he can't face them even with his corruption magic, to which Faye agrees, asking him to give it a shot. When Aizel asks about the place he can find such a strong being, Faye points towards S.H.I.E.L.D., saying that if he can eliminate him, she will reconsider the war with humans. Realizing that he just has to eliminate a puny human, Aizel uses his corruption magic on S.H.I.E.L.D., which results in an explosion. Aizel tells Faye that it was an easy task, but gets told by her not to get too confident. To his surprise, S.H.I.E.L.D. comes out of that explosion unscathed, making Azazel wonder if he has not fully recovered. Nonetheless, he decides to attack Shield directly and tries to crush him under a boulder. However, Shield once again comes out unharmed, and in the end, Azazel makes up his mind to face him directly and disappears into thin air. This whole situation starts making Shield anxious, as he has never dealt with corruption magic. Hence, he doesn't know how to counter it. Just then, Azazel appears in front of Shield and grabs his neck, making Shield realize that this might be the end for him. But thanks to barrier magic reflection, Shield isn't harmed by the corruption magic, and instead, Azazel's hand gets severed, forcing him to back away. At this point, Azazel can't understand what's going on, as it looks like a simple barrier spell, and Faye informs Azazel that his barrier is so strong that it can repel all sorts of magic. However, Azazel still refuses to give up and appears behind Shield in an instant, planning to eliminate him before he can deploy his barrier. However, his attacks get blocked once again by Shield's barrier and sever his other arm as well. Shield mocks Azazel by advising him to take care of himself, while Faye also orders Azazel to stop. He argues that a wound like this would fully heal in a week, which is something Shield finds way more interesting than his barrier. Nonetheless, Azazel wonders if all humans have learned to use such magic, but Faye informs him that, as far as she knows, Shield's the only one. Additionally, Azazel has understood Faye's intention after battling with Shield, and is aware that she plans to continue the war after Shield's death, to which she agrees. Meanwhile, Shield, who heard their conversation, figures that the world will be done for if Faye were to absorb his barrier magic. For now, Faye invites Azazel to Muria for 100 years of training, and he informs Faye that he has some things to finish first. With that, Azazel gives Shield a bombastic side-eye and disappears just like a true vampire would. After he leaves, Faye tells Shield that this demon will be very useful to them, and although Shield is a bit terrified of Azazel, he also believes that someone like him would be a good asset. Faye further adds that it's not just about Azazel's fighting spirit, as his true strength is the overwhelming force. Demons make both allies and enemies submit through fear. Curious, Shield asks if this overwhelming force of demons includes traitors as well, to which Faye agrees and reassures him that once the demons pledge loyalty, they never betray. Once they are done talking, Faye heads to the city to get her reward, and a few days later, they finally arrive near the city of Muria. As they walk towards the city, Shield remembers how difficult it was to prove that the curse was dealt with without any proof. Just then, Shield pauses mid-sentence as he finally sees Muria City for the first time and mentions how it's even more amazing than he thought. Without wasting any time, he heads towards the mansion, and after showing the guards his ruby bracelet, informs them that he's the new lord. The guards formally welcome Shield, informing him that they were waiting for him. However, as soon as Shield enters the mansion, he notices everyone staring at him as if he were caught taking creep shots. One of the butlers then takes Shield inside a room, letting him know that there's someone waiting for him. Shield tells Faye that he can feel their cold stares, and she suggests eliminating them if they were to reject them. Suddenly, the door of that room opens, and a chopped fellow, along with 2 bodyguards, appears. He welcomes Shield by calling him the representative of Helena's country, and says that he has heard everything from Gabriel. After introducing himself as Gamag, he mentions that since the previous lord's time, he has been entrusted with managing the domain. As Shield comes from a common birth, Gamag comments on how it would be best for both parties if Shield continues living freely as before. Shield instantly catches up to what's going on and questions Gamag if he's asking him to be a figurehead lord, while Gamag keeps all the real power. Just then, their conversation is interrupted by the sudden appearance of Azazel. Turns out he released all the other sealed demons as well, and is now requesting Faye to let them work under Shield. Gamag becomes furious and orders his men to take care of Azazel. But as expected, Azazel turns that dude into minced meat in an instant, while the other bodyguard who was with Gamag is unable to move due to shock and has already turned on the tap inside his pants. Seeing this, one of the baddest demons known to men steps up, offering to eliminate the unclean one for Azazel. The demon named Beluga then summons her sword and tells that bodyguard that leaving loose ends only causes trouble later. With that, she cuts him in half, And on the other hand, Gamag, who still refuses to get off his high horse, gets torn down to pieces by Aizel. After witnessing all this, Shield begins to panic as he doesn't want to turn it into a rule by terror. Aizel kneels in front of Shield and informs him that demons are sensitive to extermination intent, saying that there's no place for those who don't know their place. He then asks Beluga about the others inside the domain, and she lets him know that she has already dealt with them. Following that, she calls for some of the workers she has left alive and informs Shield that these 5 are the only ones who had no ill will towards him. Shield freaks out after finding that everyone else is dead and realizes that only 2 guards, 1 cook, 1 maid, and a little girl are left. Nonetheless, he orders these people to keep working as before and promises to double their salary. But in return, they have to keep what happened a secret. With tears in their eyes, these workers instantly accept Shield as their new lord. But while they all are happy, the little girl seems to be staring at him intensely. Moreover, Shield notices that her hands are shaking, and he gets informed by Beluga that she is the hidden child of the former lord and was imprisoned by Gamag. As soon as they untie her, Shield spots the wounds on her legs, and just before he gets the chance to ask her about them, the girl starts running away. This causes more of her wounds to be revealed, which makes Shield wonder just what on earth happened to her at such a young age. The girl then yells at Shield not to look and mentions that if she's going to be locked up again and suffer, she'd rather die. Beluga questions whether she should handle her, but Shield says that it is his fault for lacking sensitivity. For now, he orders the workers to get some medicine and take care of the girl. This comes as a surprise to her, and she questions why Shield is doing such things, to which he replies by saying that this is something anyone would do. Surprised, the girl asks if he doesn't eliminate or enslave people, and gets told by Shield that he won't be doing any such things. Ultimately, she apologizes to Shield for not thanking him first and introduces herself as Lummies. Additionally, while she understands that Shield is not like Gamag, Lummies still can't let this domain fall into the hands of demons, as this is the city her father dedicated his entire life to, and it's her job to protect her loved ones. Hearing this reminds Shield of an old geezer saw putting on a barrier around a crow's nest. She mentioned how his magic was unlike anything he had seen before. This is exactly what made the old man curious about why Shield was learning something so boring instead of those cool attack spells. Shield's reasoning behind it was that he wanted to protect something important to him. In the present, after hearing what the girl said, he realizes that she has something to protect as well and decides to teach her magic so she can get strong and take this town from him. However, he then drops the bomb and informs her that he only teaches barrier magic. The hope on her face disappears faster than an accidental dad after hearing this, and before she gets the chance to shout at him, Beluga takes her away. With that, Shield asks Aizel about their plan moving forward, and he suggests they make good use of the legacy left by the previous lord. They all then head to the shore, where Shield notices that all the dikes built have been destroyed and decides to start things off with the flood control work. Moreover, he feels like the flood control system was left unattended because it required heavy investment. But if it stays like this, it will lead to constant recovery efforts from disasters. But before they get the chance to start to work, many civilians surround Shield, asking if he's the new lord. Furthermore, they are concerned about the fact that their lord is working with demons. In order to de-escalate this situation, Shield tries informing him about his intentions, only to be called a liar. Beluga gets furious after hearing this and grabs her weapon, but Shield stops her and reassures the townsfolk that they are not here to start a fight, but to do flood control work. One of the whale-resembling men gets annoyed after hearing this, as that would hinder his excessive tax collection plan, and tells others not to believe his lies. Ultimately, Beluga beheads him out of anger, and seeing that, the others try to charge her, but she cuts them in half as well, asking if someone else has something to say. Even someone like Shield gets a bit scared after seeing her in action and hopes to never become her enemy. Shield then announces that he is not looking to start a fear-based regime, and eventually decides to just prove it with actions instead of using words. With that, he uses barrier skills to make a wall that could stop the city from getting flooded and reassures everyone that it could last for 3 years. However, the townsfolk are still not satisfied, as it's just a transparent barrier, and S.H.I.E.L.D. gives them an open challenge to try to break it. Furthermore, he decides to make it an actual contest called the Barrier Breaking Tournament, and whoever manages to deal the most damage to the barrier will be the victor. The prize for the winner includes a specially crafted set of equipment, enlistment in the regular army, and excellent benefits. Meanwhile, the crowd gathered can't comprehend why everyone is making a fuss about just a simple barrier magic. And when someone tries to inform the others that it's the same barrier that was put on Helena's country, they still refuse to believe it. Nonetheless, the announcer asks everyone to be quiet and gives the adventurers the green light to attack the barrier as much as they want for 10 minutes. With that, the tournament officially commences, and everyone starts to attack the barrier with their most powerful attacks. Giant explosions take place near the barrier, which makes the townsfolk believe that this will be a piece of cake, but S.H.I.E.L.D. is more than confident in his barrier. After the smoke clears, everyone notices that there isn't even a single scratch on the barrier, but since there is plenty of time left, they continue to attack. Eventually, the time runs out, and they still fail to make a dent in that barrier. Now it's time for S.H.I.E.L.D. to announce the winner, and after he carefully examines the barrier, S.H.I.E.L.D. manages to find the spot that was damaged the most. The winner turns out to be contestant number 24, and while everyone is busy celebrating, Beluga comes up to S.H.I.E.L.D., asking the point behind a tournament where no one can be hurt. S.H.I.E.L.D. informs her that this gives them an understanding of the combat power of residents, which will be helpful when Beluga recruits soldiers. S.H.I.E.L.D. further adds that comrades should help each other out like this, which ends up making the lowly demon blush a little. Beluga then mentions that she thought S.H.I.E.L.D. was just a good-for-nothing lord, but she has now changed her mind. Hearing this causes S.H.I.E.L.D. to wonder what kind of image he has been giving off, and Beluga lets him know that she could have been lying about the good-for-nothing lord part. Simultaneously, Aizel comes flying and informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that there are guests at the mansion. S.H.I.E.L.D. wonders if it's Gabriel, but Aizel whispers something in his ear, making S.H.I.E.L.D. realize that they are not someone he was looking forward to meeting. After he returns to the mansion, Faye asks if he has identified the visitor, to which S.H.I.E.L.D. replies by saying that he heard it's someone strong, so it must be Olivier, who is the strongest court mage. However, after opening the door, S.H.I.E.L.D. finds out that it's not Olivier but a shiny head named Gamag. Annoyed, S.H.I.E.L.D. questions why he is here, to which Gamag replies that while a court mage like him shouldn't have come to such a place, he had to come in order to take back a little bug like S.H.I.E.L.D. He further mentions that it's an order from the Knight's commander, causing S.H.I.E.L.D. to ask why they want him back after banishing him. Gamag mentions that he personally doesn't care if Helena has a barrier or not, but the higher-ups seem to think otherwise. Hearing this makes S.H.I.E.L.D. realize that the only one who could oppose the Knight's commander's decision is the king, which means the king wasn't involved in his banishment. Nonetheless, Gamag warns S.H.I.E.L.D. that he won't hold back if S.H.I.E.L.D. tries to resist, and questions if S.H.I.E.L.D. actually plans to fight him or something. He also adds the fact that barrier magic is the only thing S.H.I.E.L.D. can use and requests S.H.I.E.L.D. not to die, as he has to bring him back alive. With that being said, Gamag decides to show S.H.I.E.L.D. what the real power of a court mage looks like, and uses a skill that is so bright that it makes it hard for S.H.I.E.L.D. to see. Additionally, this situation makes S.H.I.E.L.D. realize that since this light is not an attack, his barrier magic isn't blocking it, but at the same time, his barrier magic isn't just about reflection. Just as Gamag is about to land an attack on S.H.I.E.L.D., he uses barrier magic detection and finds the exact location of Gamag, even though he is unable to see anything. But before S.H.I.E.L.D. gets the chance to do anything, Gamag is sent flying, and he crashes into a nearby wall. S.H.I.E.L.D. finally opens his eyes and sees Faye standing in front of him, asking him to bring some food. S.H.I.E.L.D. questions if Faye did this, to which she agrees, saying that just watching in silence would have taken forever. S.H.I.E.L.D. then asks Gamag if he's all right, and although that shiny head isn't shining anymore, Gamag still doesn't let go of his arrogant act and tells S.H.I.E.L.D. that there are plenty more people after him, and compared to them, he's nothing. Hearing this makes S.H.I.E.L.D. realize that Olivier might come too, and shockingly, he isn't sure if his barrier magic will be enough against someone like that. Just then, Aizel appears with some food in his hand and figures that this attack must be Faye doing. Nevertheless, he decides to clean up this mess, and when S.H.I.E.L.D. tells him that he wishes to reinforce their forces, Aizel mentions that the selection for the strongest regular army should be finished soon. Later that day, S.H.I.E.L.D. heads to the spot where the recruitment process is taking place, and a demon present informs S.H.I.E.L.D. that the battle to decide the Knight's commander is taking place. A dual wielder named Caprese is up against a guy named Oliver. Caprese instantly begins laughing after seeing the state of that dude, and S.H.I.E.L.D. also figures that he looks pretty weak, but since this is the final match, Oliver must have fought his way here. After some time, the battle between the two of them commences, and Caprese instantly appears behind Oliver and puts her sword to his neck. S.H.I.E.L.D. panics after seeing this and deploys his shield, but fails to protect him in time. However, Oliver didn't even need protection from S.H.I.E.L.D. as he managed to get himself out of that situation flawlessly. Caprese figures that it must be luck, and this time, she corners him against the wall. S.H.I.E.L.D. once again tries to put his barrier while Oliver closes his eyes, and suddenly, Caprese starts feeling a change in atmosphere. To her surprise, Oliver begins to circle her with an insane level of speed and ultimately appears right in front of her. With a single attack, he sends her crashing onto the ground, causing Caprese to lose consciousness. After some time, Caprese gains consciousness, and after getting up, she tells Oliver that it wasn't bad for a lucky hit. Caprese further mentions that she won't be holding back anymore, and when Oliver questions if she still wants to fight, Caprese promises to take his head off. After hearing this, Oliver closes his eyes once again and hits a pretty flashy move with his sword, causing Caprese to realize that the atmosphere has once again changed, but in a different way this time. However, she doesn't care about it and charges Oliver, ready to crush him with everything she's got. But to her surprise, Oliver struck her right in the gut with his wooden sword, making Caprese bleed from her mouth. At this point, Caprese realizes that Oliver has turned into a completely different person and is even stronger than before. Nonetheless, she jumps in the air and strikes her with her sword, but Oliver manages to block it. Caprese follows her attack by kicking his sword, and knowing that this battle isn't going anywhere, she decides to make use of her speed. But before she even gets the chance to pull any other tricks, Oliver wraps his arm around her neck and throws her onto the ground, disarming Caprese of her swords. Following that, Oliver puts his sword right beside her face, asking if they should put an end to this. With that, he prepares to take her down for good while Caprese figures that a loser can only accept death. Luckily, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s barrier blocks Oliver's attack and saves Caprese's life. He then compliments both of them for fighting well and informs Oliver that he is going to be the captain of the Knights starting today. Oliver, who is still as nervous as ever, questions if it's really the right decision when suddenly, Caprese hits him from behind, telling Oliver to just accept it. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. thinks about how Oliver was rocking some serious power and wonders if that's what people call a gift. Aizel gets impressed by the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. knows what gifts are and informs him that it was the gift of possession. Apparently, gifts are different from magic as they are rare abilities that defy the law of nature. Oliver's gift of possession allows something else to enter his body. According to Aizel, Oliver could be possessed by over 1,000 sword masters. Hearing this makes S.H.I.E.L.D. question if there are duds among them, to which Aizel agrees, causing S.H.I.E.L.D. to wonder if he made the right decision. However, he believes that although Caprese's lost, she will be a great help to Oliver and decides to trust in his potential. Now that the army problem is taken care of, Aizel shows Caprese's the current tax records he has compiled, and after taking a look at them, S.H.I.E.L.D. loses his mind after hearing that there's a tax for when a boy is born. S.H.I.E.L.D. instantly abolishes it and takes a look at the other records, only to find that there's a tax for becoming a fatty and a tax for cloudy nights on a full moon, which makes him wonder if people will be taxed for breathing as well. Aizel points out a record, saying that there's even a tax for having breath that smells like rotten cheese. S.H.I.E.L.D. decides to abolish all the taxes, but decides to keep the overweight one, as that's kind of funny. After asking Aizel to take care of the rest, he asks him to come along while he inspects the land in order to figure out what the people need. As he begins roaming around the city, a small boy comes up to S.H.I.E.L.D., saying that it's the same cool old guy from before. His mother gets scared seeing her child say such things about the Lord, but S.H.I.E.L.D. reassures her that it's fine. Before long, a crowd gathers around him, thanking S.H.I.E.L.D. for abolishing all those unnecessary taxes. They further mention that thanks to him, everyone's spirits have lifted, and the agricultural production has increased. This makes Shield glad, as he was scared that people might think he was running a reign of terror, which everyone disagrees with. Just then, a baby seal resembling a man appears, complaining about the overweight tax, but gets shut down by the townsfolk instantly. At that moment, Shield hears a person shouting at someone for hurting a demon child and notices a human kid mocking demons for entering a human village. Before the demon dad could say anything, Shield interferes and decides to hear the human side of the story. This makes the demon think that Shield, being a human, will most likely take the side of that human brat. The demon kid tells Shield that the human kid bullied him just because he is a demon, and after hearing that, Shield tells the human kid to tell him what happened. That kid mentions that demons should just leave the human village, which ends up making Shield mad, and he traps that kid inside a barrier. He then questions the kid if demons are different from humans, to which the kid agrees, saying that they have long ears and small sausages. Shield replies by telling the kid that he has freckles as well, which makes him different from others, and asks if that means he can't make friends. Shockingly, the demon kid tells the human kid that they can still be friends, and Shield adds the fact that if he were excluded just for having freckles, wouldn't it make him sad? When the human kid agrees, Shield informs the kid that to him, both humans and demons are like family, which is why he wants everyone to get along. Ultimately, the human kid understands and apologizes to the demon kid. Seeing that everything has been resolved, the demons take a sigh of relief as well. Later that day, Shield puts a barrier above the city, and Aizel, who is witnessing this power, mentions how it's like a miracle. Shield lets him know that it's just simple barrier magic, and says that by connecting the barriers he has placed so far, he will create something like a great nation. Once he's done, Shield comments on how this country is really beautiful, to which Aizel agrees. Shield notices the look on his face and mentions that Aizel looks happy, and Aizel replies by saying that he's just glad that the two races can live in peace, as it's not like he is a war mongrel who loves fighting. Shield appreciates this and praises Aizel for working hard this past month, to which Aizel replies that it's his job. Lastly, Shield asks Aizel if he's enjoying himself in this country now that his seal is broken, and gets told by Aizel, who has a smile on his face, that it's much better than it was 300 years ago for him. Shield points out the fact that Aizel laughed and ran away, planning to celebrate the completion of the barrier with a party. Elsewhere, Karasaris begs a girl named Akin to help him out, causing her to mock the proud captain of knights for actually bowing his head. Karasaris mentions that now that Gamag is gone, Akin is the only one he can rely on. Although Akin doesn't mind, as it's a great chance to study shield magic, she decides to do what Karasaris wants her to do in her own way. After she leaves, Elaine appears, asking why Akin was here. After finding out what Karasaris did, Elaine freaks out and reminds Karasaris that she doesn't follow orders and is completely unreliable. Annoyed, Karasaris questions what a busty schemer like her can even do, and Elaine tells Karasaris to give her 2 nights, and she'll solve everything on her own. Meanwhile, Shield is roaming around the town with Beluga, discussing the increasing number of merchants. Just then, someone calls Shield's name, and he decides to hear what he has to say. That person introduces himself as a merchant who crossed the sea to get to this country, and says that he heard that the position of merchant guild leader was vacant. Shield reminds him that he doesn't take bribes, and the merchant figures that the other folks must have lacked sincerity when they asked for the position. Following that, the dude shows Shield a wagon full of gold coins, saying that he can show this level of sincerity. In his mind, the merchant believes that Shield is an easy mark, but to his shock, Shield still refuses and walks away, saying that giving someone authority is a pain. Seeing this, all the townsfolk nearby start to cheer for Shield, calling him someone who treats everyone equally. This makes Shield realize that he's standing out a little too much and asks Beluga to prepare the disguise. With that being said, Shield takes on the most cliché-looking homeless guy appearance and asks Beluga to head back, as he will be walking around by himself. But little does he know, the townsfolk easily recognize Shield despite his sad excuse of a disguise, and eventually he walks up to a civilian and introduces himself as a traveler, asking how life is around this country. Everyone is shocked by how his acting skills are worse than Machine Gun Kelly's, but they make sure to play along and reassure the so-called traveler that everyone is happy thanks to their lord. Shield starts to blush after hearing it and begins getting emotional, causing others to wonder if he's even trying to hide his act. Just then, Faye appears, asking what he's doing here. Shield tries to keep his act in front of her as well, but she instantly recognizes Shield and asks him to cut the lame jokes. Faye then informs him that she went to meet the merchant since Shield was busy, and now she's exhausted because of it. Additionally, she tells Shield that she met an elf on the way back who asked her to give Shield a letter. According to Faye, the elf seemed pretty high-ranking but was brutally injured. Shield realizes that it's an official letter from the elf nation, and after giving it a read, asks Faye about where that elf is now. Faye mentions that a mage showed up mid-journey and took the elf away. The name of that mage was something like Olivier. After finding out that Olivier kidnapped the messenger sent to him, Shield can't understand what she's planning, taking a messenger from the elf nation hostage. For the time being, Shield decides to head back to the mansion and tick off the things that are taken care of. He then figures that judging from that letter he received, the elf power struggle might affect this country as well, which is why he needs to talk to Aizel about it once he's done with dungeon maintenance. For now, Shield decides to check the mansion's defenses when, suddenly, he hears a weird sound and a demon kid working on something on his own. He freaks out after seeing the Lord himself and instantly starts to bow. Shield asks him to relax and asks for his name. The demon introduces himself as Dago, saying that he's the weakest among the demons, so Aizel left him behind. Following that, Shield questions about what he was doing, and Dago informs him that he was breaking down magic stones and modifying their effects. While Shield has heard of embedding magic stones' properties into tools, he has never thought of using them this way. This makes him ask Dago what he was planning to make, and Dago lets him know that he wanted to try modifying the barrier in his own way. Seeing Shield go silent after hearing this, Dago gets scared and starts to apologize for getting carried away. But to his surprise, Shield tells him that it's quite fascinating. Dago agrees, telling Shield that he thought it would be great if others could use Shield's barrier as well. Curious, Shield asks how it will work, and Dago shows him a magic stone he modified to respond to magical powers. With this, even if a person is away from Shield, they can make an invisible barrier. Surprised, Shield offers to provide whatever Dago wants, and Dago requests a few separated fragments of his barrier, and in an instant, Shield provides several of them. Now with the resources in place, Dago attaches Shield's barrier with his magic stone and eventually completes his build. Shield decides to give it a try and gets overjoyed after finding out that this perfectly weaponizes his barrier. Shield then asks him about the physical defense barrier and gets told by Dago that he was planning on making it react to body heat or minerals. After hearing this, Shield decides to allocate a special budget for Dago's project so he can buy stones and give him about 100 more barriers. Dago begins to cry out of joy after seeing this and promises to give it his all. Before he leaves, Shield asks Dago if he's able to do building repairs as well, and when Dago agrees, Shield gives him the work to fix a wall which Faye destroyed during their fight with that baldy court mage. Suddenly, a portal-like thing appears right behind Dago, which makes Shield wonder if it's Gabriel. But to his shock, Akin jumps out of that, making Shield question if Karasaris sent her. Akin agrees and mentions how that old guy practically begged her to go. Knowing Akin, Shield is sure that she didn't just come because Karasaris asked her to, and Akin replies that she came because she loves fighting. Furthermore, she suggests they play a little and instantly attacks Shield, wanting to finally break his barrier. However, seeing that she failed once again, Akin can't figure out the reason, as when she uses the barrier magic, it turns out to be as ordinary as ever. Having no other choice, she decides to use an even more powerful magic spell. Shield tries to stop her by saying that they are just done with the repairs, but Akin couldn't care less and throws that attack towards Shield. He uses barrier magic reflection and sends that attack back to Akin, but before it hits her, she uses her portal to send the attack elsewhere. Akin, who is starting to enjoy herself, wonders what kind of magic she should use next and ends up deciding on her own. Out of nowhere, the barrier Dago made stops her magic, and simultaneously he appears in front of S.H.I.E.L.D., wanting to protect the Lord. Seeing that his legs are shaking, S.H.I.E.L.D. thanks him and asks him to fall back. Curious, Akin asks about this barrier tool, and S.H.I.E.L.D. gives Dago the green light to talk about it. Dago then informs Akin that it's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s barrier magic, which he modified with his own magic stone. Akin finds it pretty amazing and tests its durability by attacking it with electricity. She is shocked to see that it could block her attack, and Dago reassures her that no spell can break through it. Akin then throws some slime at it, and since slime doesn't emit magic, it fails to block it. Dago gets disappointed seeing that it has a weakness, and Akin offers to improve the barrier together. Dago starts to hesitate, and having no other choice, S.H.I.E.L.D. allows Akin to play with Dago only if she promises to behave. After she agrees, the two of them run away together while S.H.I.E.L.D. stands there with tears in his eyes, asking them to fix the mess they created. Later that night, someone breaks into the mansion while S.H.I.E.L.D. is enjoying his wet dream and appears right on top of him. In a state of panic, S.H.I.E.L.D. wakes up, wondering if it's an assassin from Helena. But to his shock, S.H.I.E.L.D. accidentally touches Soft and before long realizes that it's Meryl. Do you think S.H.I.E.L.D. can defeat someone like Olivier, who is the strongest court mage? Comment barrier if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.